this feeling of imposter syndrome where it's like, I don't believe that I would ever want someone to give me money or pay me for something. Like I think I'm a fraud. Like there's so many people better at this thing. Like, yeah, I want to start an Etsy shop, or I want to teach yoga, or I want to make my own makeup line. But Jamie's done that. Bobby Brown's done that. Someone else is making candles. It's this feeling of shame. You know, what if I put this out there and like, who am I to like take up anybody's time? That is just so prevalent.
Yeah.
And
so prevalent.
I don't even get it, honestly. Like just the amount of rejection you just shared, plus you articulated in the book, and also being a little girl who was like in this sort of different kind of a situation where you were adopted. Like I think so many kids would feel intrinsically rejected. And this is the feeling that it's so easy to go to that place of I'm not enough and I'm a fraud. How did you get over that? And how do you help women to go, no, like, don't do that to yourself. Like you do have something, especially in the face of so much rejection, and you kept going. It seems superhuman.
The thing that I love is that you're talking about this, right? Imposter syndrome and all of that. And I talk about a lot of, stories pertaining to that in the book as well. The very first thing that is so important for everybody listening right now is like literally everybody has it. I've never met a person who doesn't have it. Everybody has it, right? And so it's like, okay, that's the first thing. Because once we know that, we're like, this person I watch on television every day has it. Like everybody has it. And that, right, just wrapping our heads around that is really empowering, because it's like, okay, I'm not alone in this. It's normal. I feel unqualified. I feel all those things, right? Everybody has it. The second thing is, I do a lot of things when I start to feel it. Like I've built this, I talk about a little bit about this in the book, where I built kind of this own imaginary toolbox that I pull from when I catch myself going there. You know what I mean? And there's things I tell myself. One of them is, I'm trying to remember this part isn't in the book, but I'm just going to share it. I feel like it was Steve Jobs. I don't remember who said this, but one person shared this quote that was so powerful, and it's always stuck with me. They basically said, every single thing that's ever been built or created or done in the world was created by someone just like you and me. And when you think about it, it's true. It's all true. And I think about that. I write so many things. For me, when you see my circle of friends, they're all different faiths. Some of them have no faith. But their hearts are huge, right? So I love having powerful people around me that remind me of who I am and help talk me out of my BS when I start, like, I don't know if I can do. But for me also, I keep a lot of empowering statements around me that I pull from. And, one of them that's huge for me, because faith is a big deal to me, although I think this applies to anybody, no matter what their faith. But, there's a famous saying that really fills my soul when I start to feel imposter syndrome or doubt myself or feel like I don't have what it takes or like I'm not qualified, right? How many times do we feel like we're not qualified? And these famous words say, God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. And for me, I feel like when we have a knowing in our gut, right? And we can't shake it, right? I feel like that's part of your calling or your purpose in life. And I think we can have multiple of those. But when you have it, for me, I kept feeling this calling, like I was supposed to create this dream, launch this dream, and I was supposed to do whatever I can to shift culture in the beauty industry. I just kept feeling it. And during all these years of no's, because when we finally created this product, and by the way, I just thought, as an entrepreneur, like so many people will relate to this. You're like, okay, this product is amazing. Finally, yes, it's just going to do well, right? Oh my gosh. The first 3 years, I couldn't even afford to pay myself, right? And every retailer we sent the product to either said no, or never replied. Every meeting I got in person when I thought I was going to crush it and kill it. I remember this first big Sephora meeting I had, and I literally left the building going down the elevator, walking as fast as I could to get out the door. This is in downtown San Francisco. And I could barely afford the plane ticket to get there. And it was a big no. And I was so devastated. I was trying, because the elevator ride down from this big no was filled with people that I'm guessing worked at Sephora. And I'm like, I'm a CEO. I cannot cry. I've got to hold my shit together. I've got to make it. And I remember getting out of the elevator, rushing out the side of the building on Market Street, and like pushing myself against this brick wall next to a fast food restaurant and just sobbing as hard as I could. It was no after no. QVC, I remember years of no. And I finally got the head guy, Alan Burke, who is responsible for building this billion-dollar empire on QVC. And he got all these luxury brands from department stores to want to sell on QVC, and they still do. And he's just a genius. And I remember finally getting him on the phone. And I remember pacing in the office, like so nervous because I needed a yes. And well, I should say pacing in our office, AKA the living room, because right. And he got on the phone and he's like, we've reviewed your products with all of our buyers. It's unanimous. You're not the right fit for QVC or for our customers. And I was so devastated because with my mission of wanting to shift culture around beauty, I just knew, oh my gosh, if I can get on QVC, it's not like a Photoshop magazine. It is live. It is live television to 100 million homes. And I could prove how my product works live. And I could show models of that represented every different type of and size and age and skin color and skin tone. And I just knew in my gut, right? I knew in my gut when we check in with our purpose, with our calling, with our mission, I knew that I was supposed to be on QVC. And to finally get this big call from the head of all of it, Alan Burke, telling me I'm not the right fit and we're not the right fit for QVC or their customers. It's devastating when people tell you you're not the right fit, and when people that you are so tempted to put on a pedestal because they're experts and they've created incredible things and they're known as visionaries. When touted visionaries are telling you one thing and your gut is telling you another, it's hard to keep going. It's also hard to feel like, well, wait, what if my gut is wrong? And what if I'm not enough? And what if I'm, like he said, not the right fit? And what if I'm not qualified? And here's the thing is, fast forward, a long time later, when we finally got one shot on QVC, we finally got a yes from a buyer, not from Alan Burke. We finally got a yes, and we got one shot, which came down to 10 minutes. And we would I knew, and here's the thing, Kathy, is at the time, and this was a little over 3 years into our business. So at the time, we were still selling like 2 to 3 orders a day on our website, barely keeping the lights on. And QVC needed us to manufacture, pay for, and ship in over 6,000 units of our Bye Bye Under Eye Concealer in order to sell in a 10-minute window to hit their sales target or not come back. And the biggest thing that was on the line was that in beauty, it was a consignment deal, which meant we had to pay for all of it, make it, ship it in, and we only got paid for what sold. So and as an entrepreneur, you know this, everyone listening knows this, like never take a purchase order you can't afford to lose. But in this case, we had nothing. This was our last chance at like not going out of business. And it was a big yes. And we decided to kind of risk it all. We applied for SBA loans to cover the cost of making the 6,000 units. 22 banks said no. It was bank number 23. They gave us enough money just to cover the purchase order in an SBA loan. So we had one shot on QVC and we had to sell, right? We had to hit their sales target, dollars per minute and not come back. When we got the one shot, I flew out there. I was there a week before. I went out a week before this airing, and I sat in a rental car in the parking lot right out front every day. And I just sat there because it felt so heavy and so big. And I remembered, you talk about Oprah, actually. By the way, Oprah was the very first person to read the book cover to cover because I wanted her blessing on the parts I included about her. Otherwise, I would have never included.
Of course, you had that
stories.
epic piece of this whole puzzle. Oh my God.
It's a crazy story. And I got her blessing at the very end of the book. I shared, okay, when you talk about I've never, not to be off track, but I've never shared all the real story behind the story of everything. So this book is the first time, including all the personal stuff. But anyhow, I sat in that parking lot staring at the front door of QVC, and I remembered this Oprah episode where she talked about the color purple and how she was so obsessed with it that it felt like it was too much for her to carry anymore because she wanted it so bad. And someone had told her, oh, real actresses are up for the part. And right. And so she told the story of just going to a retreat where she was running the track in circles and singing I Surrender All and asking God to take it from her. And then Steven Spielberg called. And anyways, so I remembered this episode. Anyone who's seen that episode will remember. But I literally channeled that. I'm sitting in this car in the parking lot. I started singing I Surrender All because it felt too heavy for me to carry. It felt like the next time I walk through these doors at QVC, I'm either going to walk back out of business or with my whole life changed. It was one or the other because we had one shot. And if you do not hit the sales goal, you don't come back. And the hardest thing, and I talk a lot about learning how to tune in and trust our own gut and trust ourselves, even when everyone else is saying something different. And this was probably the biggest lesson I've ever learned in my career and life was in this moment as it pertains to trusting my gut, because we had one shot. And what we did is we hired these third-party consultants, and they helped so many people sell their products so well on television and other channels as well. And when we met with them, they all said the same thing to me, which is, okay, if you want a chance at doing well, here's what you need to do. You need to use these type of models, which were just like the ones I had seen in magazines for years. And, you need to produce yourself this way. And I would say to them, okay, but but what if I'm sitting at home and I have rosacea? Exactly. And what if I'm, 75 years old and I have hyperpigmentation? How is anyone going to know this product works for them if they don't see someone using it who looks like them? And, we would fight about it. And these experts wanted the best for me. They wanted me to win, but they were just telling me what they knew. Right. And this is so important, is so many times experts, visionaries, etc., you can never take it personally when they don't believe in your dream or think you have what it takes, because no matter how visionary they are, typically they still only will believe something will be successful if they've already seen it successful before. So if you're doing something new or novel or different, or you're going to put your own take on it, they're not going to realize they're doing this, but they're likely not going to think it's going to work because subconsciously they've never seen it work before. And so I'm sitting there knowing I have one shot on TV and knowing the experts are telling me use these type of models. And yet my gut instinct, my why, my authenticity, right? My authentic reason for launching this business is to not use that type of, to use every type of model, right? And it's really hard in these decisions in life when your experts are telling you one thing, your gut's telling you another. And we had one shot. And I just remember this moment sitting in that car, singing I Surrender All, crying. And I just remember thinking of who is this woman that's going to be watching me. If I have the blessing of her spending her precious time, turning her television on and seeing me, I'm not going to waste it. I'm not even going to focus on, let me sell as much as I can. What do I want to stand for? And I just remember having this moment hit me where I imagine so many different types of women. And one of them that always stands out in my head when I think back to this memory is I imagine a single mom folding laundry in Nebraska who literally doesn't even have time to remember that she matters and that she's beautiful. And I would rather have her look up on her TV and even not buy anything and see me showing women that look like her and stand for that than sell a shitload of product and stand for nothing. And I knew what I had to do, but sometimes when we know what we have to do, it doesn't mean it's easy. And so the live show happened and the countdown clock at 10 minutes started and it was like 9:59, 9:58, 9:50. And I'm like, oh shit. But like, you can't try to sell and you can't look freaked out, or nothing will sell either. And I just remember like literally pouring everything I had on the air. And I remember the moment my bare face came up on national television, my bright red cheeks. And I remember going to all the different models that looked like, real people. And I'll never forget, it was like, I was shaking like a leaf. Oh my gosh. And then the whole cell, because everything was on the line. And then I remember like right toward the end, the host was like, the deep shade is down to 200. The tan shade is almost, and I was like, what? Oh shit. Oh. And then I remember all of a sudden at the 10-minute mark, the sold out sign came up and I literally like tears like streamed down my face. I remember my husband like rushed through the double doors of the studio and I looked at him and they cut the live show and boom, they're on to the next cell of the next product. I looked at him and I'm like sobbing and I'm like, real women have spoken. And he's like, we're not going bankrupt. And it was like this whole like thing. And that one show turned into 5 that year, 101 the next year, 151 the next year. And then we've done 250 live shows a year on QVC for 8 years in a row and built the largest beauty brand in QVC's history. It is right now at this moment to this day. And the only reason I share that is for every person listening. It was 3 years of no from QVC. It was Alan Burke saying, you are not the right fit for our customers or for QVC. And we finally did get a shot. And so 2 things about that. And by the way, oh my gosh. So by the way, okay, I love, for everyone listening, like literally no one can tell you are not the right fit, right? Like nobody can tell you that. And I feel in life, our own calling is always stronger than any opposition. Sometimes it feels like our opposition is huge, but your opposition cannot compete with your calling. And what it comes down to is which one you decide to listen to, right?
So good.
And like, so this part, so fast forward, we're on QVC now doing really, really well. And Alan Burke ends up, I get to know him. He's freaking a genius. He became our biggest champion, our biggest cheerleader. He's to this day right now, one of my closest mentors in my life. So awesome. And then he retired from QVC after like a million years there. I don't know how many decades, but he retired. And we ended up hiring him on our advisory board in a paid position. And it was this moment where I realized, Kathy, like, oh, the guy who rejected me is now working for me, yeah, right? Cool. And it was like, oh my gosh, like nobody can tell you how big your dream can be. No one can tell you you're not the right fit. And here's the last thing I'll say about this. I didn't take it personally when he said no, right? Mm-hmm. I've gotten a lot of rejections. I talk about the investor who told me they wouldn't invest in someone because they wouldn't invest in our company because they didn't think women would buy makeup from someone who looked like me with my body and weight. Like I've had every type of rejection, and it's so easy for us because we're human to take these personally, right? And it wasn't that I wasn't hurt. It wasn't any of that. But professionally, I always made sure to not take it personally. I always made sure to treat it always as like, oh, this will be a yes one day. And then I'll decide if I want to partner with them, but it will be a yes. And I always had that attitude. And so with Alan, even after that tough no happened, Alan Burke at QVC, I still nurtured that relationship. And I still said, it's going to be a yes one day and all those things. And here's what I'll say, you guys, is, I believe, and for everyone, it's different. For some people, it's God. For some people, it's a universe. For some people, it's love. I believe in perfect timing, even when it doesn't feel so perfect to us. And what I'll say about that is like, what I learned many years later is had Alan Burke said yes when I wanted him to, we would have failed miserably because I didn't know what I didn't know. And we were not operationally sophisticated enough to handle the back end of the business of an account the size of QVC. Wow. I just didn't know it. And sometimes our hardest no's in life are actually like serendipitous grace. Yeah, like totally wrapped in this package labeled painful rejection. Yep. Anyways, it was a big thing.
God.
Oh, one more thing. Sorry, I'm like live off the cuff with you, and I love it so much. But you asked something, and I just realized I forgot to answer it. Yeah. No, but you asked for people that think their idea's already been done, or they asked for, right? One thing I want to share about that. I'm getting hyper right now because this is like, oh my gosh, so I talk about this lesson so much in the book because I wish I had learned this earlier. I wish I would have saved myself so many nights crying myself to sleep. If so many people talk themselves out of their dream, they talk themselves out of their truth because exactly what you said, they're like, oh, that person's doing so well with this idea already on social media. And this person did really well. And this person, oh no, here's the deal. Nobody, I don't even care how many, there was millions of makeup brands out there when we launched a makeup company. Please don't ever think that because your idea has already been done, that it impacts your ability to do it and succeed. It just doesn't. And when you look at all of the researchers that research authenticity and all of that, they talk about how it's impossible to have an authentic connection with another human being, a real connection, unless you show up authentically, right? If you show up as your representative or who you think the person wants you to be or whatever, you'll never have an authentic connection, which also can mean with your customers, because your customers are a relationship too, right? And with that said, as long as you show up fully, authentically who you are, it doesn't matter your idea's already been done. No one can do it the way you're going to do it. Like nobody can share it, express it, communicate it, create it the way you're going to do it. And so it's literally, as long as you're authentic and that through line of authenticity is in you, it's impossible for anyone else to have done your idea because they can't do it like you. It's impossible. And I just think that is so important. And I'll also say that because I've done now over 1,000 live shows on QVC myself. And the one thing that happens is you're there all hours of the day and night because you might have a show at 3 a.m. or 3 p.m. The fun part of it, and the hours were very hard. I did it for 8 years. I spent almost every holiday in the QVC green room and all those things, which it was the biggest blessing. It allowed people to become aware of It Cosmetics, and we couldn't afford advertising at the time or anything. So it was the biggest gift. But one of the things that I loved most about it was that in the green room, even when you're stressed out in the green room at QVC, you get to meet so many other founders of companies, right? And you all end up bonding and all the things, the good, the bad. So not everyone's nice, but you meet a lot of people. And the through line talking about authenticity is when I look back at doing over 1,000 shows on QVC, one commonality between the people who make it and the people who don't, because most people go to QVC and they're on air one time, a couple times, and they're gone, right? And when I go, why is it some people make it and some people don't? It's never their personality type. It's actually, I wish I could say it was, but it's never even if they're nice. It's like the one thing that I saw is the people who are the same on air, the people who are the same on air as they are off air, they're the people who last, right? Sometimes they're quirky and they're this and they're that and they're wild and you're like, they're crazy. And then they're that same way on air selling their product. They last because you can't fake authenticity. And viewers are smart, customers are smart, and they sense it, and they can't connect with you unless you're the same. Your heart is open and you're the freaking same. And the people that are even really great, awesome people, like good hearts in the green room, then they go on air and they're all of a sudden the professional representative that they think they're supposed to be, or they're really cool and funky because they think they're supposed to be, but that's not really who they are. They never last. And I feel like when people get this, it's freedom in so many ways, because it's so easy, especially in a social media world, to get distracted and compare ourselves and go, oh, this is working for so-and-so. Maybe I should do more of that. It's like, oh no, that's when you start to chip away at your own secret sauce and your own potential.
Jamie, it's a compelling story. What you share with a lot of successful entrepreneurs is most of us only hear the $1.2 billion sale to L'Oreal. They don't realize that you had hundreds and thousands of no's for years and years, and you were selling 1 or 2 products a day for years, and down to your last $1,000. You applied to 20 plus SBA loans. They all said no. Finally, the last one said yes, so that you could go all in on the inventory for QVC and then own it all if you didn't sell it all. And you have now been on hundreds of podcasts for this book that you're donating to a great philanthropic organization. One of the big insights I took away from the QVC experience was that you said every time you hit a goal, you never felt joy, but rather you felt relief. Mm-hmm. And that really hit me because, like you, I am a small budding entrepreneur with some 1 or 2 orders coming in a day, right? And I'm looking long-term at my own success. And I want to feel joy in accomplishing goals, not relief, but I do feel relief. I don't feel the joy. Speak to everyone listening and watching right now that has a dream, that has a side hustle, that has an entrepreneurial business. Maybe they're perhaps just full-time employees in a company. They're an intrapreneur inside a bigger company, and you want them to feel joy, not relief, when they accomplish a goal. How did you cross that bridge from relief to finding joy?
Yeah, I was in a long stretch of burnout, self-imposed burnout, and I talk a lot about work addiction and busyness addiction, which are like other forms of addiction where they almost numb us and separate us from ourselves. I talk about realizing I was doing a lot of it wrong. I talk about how I don't believe I needed to do 100-hour weeks for 10 years to build a $1 billion company. But my journey was after 3 years of hundreds and hundreds of no's, when we finally started getting success, I almost for a while couldn't believe it, right? Part of my journey is learning to believe I'm worthy of my own success, of being in my own skin, of being in my own body, of all of those things. I talk a lot in the book about self-doubt, body doubt, God doubt, all of that stuff. Because I think leadership starts on the inside. And I realized, Scott, that, because I had heard no for so long, when we started getting yeses and all this momentum was happening and we started winning awards everywhere and getting into all these big beauty stores. And, when we hit #1 on QVC, I always felt like, oh my gosh, I've got to strike while the iron's hot. This might all come crashing down at any moment, God forbid. Like I would have those thoughts, which are a form of imposter syndrome of, am I worthy of this success? Do I deserve this? Am I qualified to have it, right? And I had to really go through this emotional journey that I talk about and believe it. Even once we were acquired by L'Oreal, it was the largest acquisition in their US history. And they made me the first woman to hold a CEO title of a brand in their 100+ year history. And I remember being in that position and in that room and in that space and needing to summon the belief that I was qualified for that. I talk about the deep stuff in this book that a lot of times CEOs and leaders are embarrassed to talk about because we always have to show up as the leader for our teams, right? Sometimes we always have to show up as the leader for our own families. We have to show up this way because we're the leader. But what about all the real stuff we're dealing with? And I think part of really why I wanted to write this book is to really share those real stories behind the stories of the things I failed at and did wrong, wish I had done differently. And also the greatest things I did and the lessons I learned the hard way that hopefully will save other people time and money and and have stronger teams and save themselves crying themselves to sleep at night. But there's some stuff I did wrong that I talk about. And one of those things is I never felt the victories during a long season of a number of years because I was just driving so hard, almost in survival mode, to build the business and living in burnout. And, I talk about, for anyone who started a business with a friend or family member or their partner, I talk about the real hard stuff there too, because, I got to the point, Scott, where it was another goal hit, another show hit, finally a yes from this retailer, hiring, building, and just driving so hard. And my husband and I both were in parallel trying to start a family. So in parallel to all this, I was going through like fertility treatments and miscarriages and all kinds of stuff, which I talk about that personal journey for the first time ever, because that would be going on. But then as leaders, when those hard things are going on internally, you still have to show up.
Jamie, you got a magazine shoot today, you were saying? Tell us about what's going on over there.
Yeah, it's the book, my first ever book, Believe It, is launching in just under 5 weeks. We're under 5 weeks away. So I feel like I'm going to blink and it's going to be here. And so it's probably the most vulnerable thing I've ever done, where I just literally pour everything I have and all the things I wish I knew. It would have saved me a million nights crying myself to sleep, and the whole journey of starting in my living room and facing rejection for 3 years straight, solid, and building at cosmetics. And so now the 5 week mark, all the press starts that it comes out when the book launches. So today is a magazine shoot all day long. And I'll share more soon. But, I was thinking about this, and actually, being MLK Day today, this morning I was in hair, getting ready. I haven't done makeup yet, in hair, and I was watching Dr. Martin Luther King's speeches, some of them, right, which I've done my whole life. And I watched one this morning that's all about growing, actually. It's all about like keeping it moving. And he talked a lot about your life's blueprint. And he was using these words long before so many other people were using them, right? And he talked about your life's blueprint, about how no one else can tell you you're not worthy. And when I was thinking about this, his words, I was kind of having this big aha moment just to share with everyone in the Growth Day community this morning, in case you go through this too. But like sometimes it's ourself that's the one telling ourselves we're not worthy. And on a
most
day,
of the time, probably.
Most of the time, yeah.
Most of the time. And you're making up stories about other people thinking you're not worthy.
Yes.
So either you're telling yourself, oh, I'm not worthy, or you're thinking they don't think I'm worthy. And either way, it's a story that's probably, making you feel worse than you really need to.
Exactly. And, on this day, right, I have this big magazine shoot all day. They want 6 different looks, all these things. First of all, I have to fight in my own head the whole imposter syndrome, which is like, how is a girl like me, who is a waitress at Denny's, all these things, doing 6 looks? How do we even figure out what looks are? That's the first thing. Like fashion looks, right? You see me, I love some sweats. I love some comfy sweats, right? So I'm like, okay, 6 looks today.
Does 6 looks mean 6 outfits?
Mm-hmm.
Or does that? Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Because when I do magazine shoots, they usually they show up with stuff and they put it on. I wander around, and that's about it. I'm really. And that's about it. I'm the worst. I don't do press. I decided very early on I didn't want to be in the PR land. So very rarely do I do press. And every time I do, I realize why I don't. It's so exhausting. I really admire people who can do days of press and they do it consistently. We take for granted. It's really exhausting. People are bossing you around all day. You're just kind of wondering when you get to sit down or get to eat. It's a full schedule. Everyone wants to be famous, or they want days of magazine shoots and all that. And then they do their first PR junket in New York, and you do 16 shows in a day. And at the end, it's a privilege and a joy, and it's fun. And at the same time, it's work. You had to get up. You got what, 5 o'clock today just to prepare and get hair and makeup and everything else getting ready?
Yeah, we had hair at 5, had to get up at 4 to shower, all this stuff. Got to. And here's the thing is what a blessing, what a gift that I get to spread the word about the book. That's what really drives me, right? But what I'm realizing, and Brendan, listening to MLK's speech this morning, Dr. Martin Luther King's speech, talking about telling ourselves we're not worthy, or having other people tell you you're not worthy, exactly what you said. This is a day that the old me, the me that for decades has done lots of different things, and I'm working still, as you know, I'm a lifetime student, still working to grow out of this. The old me for sure would have let my inner critic take over all day and just powered through, hoping does this outfit fit? Are they thinking I really should be in this shoot? Are they regretting doing a story on all those things we tell ourselves, right? It doesn't have to be a magazine shoot. It could just be hopping on Zoom for something at work, or, how many times, that we get an invite to a high school reunion. Brendan, I don't know if you'll relate to this, but you coach so many people that I think you'll understand this at such a deep level. We get an invite to a high school reunion or something like that. So many of us, the first thing we think of is, oh, when I show up, how much weight have I gained? How much, all these things, right? To the point where we don't even enjoy it.
Yes.
And I remember a quote. Will you remind us all, if you remember it? There's a quote you said, and I saved it because I look at it often, and it said something about, I'll paraphrase, and then maybe you'll remember it exactly, but you can accomplish all these things, and the worst thing that could possibly happen is you get to the end of your life and you look back and you're like, I forgot to enjoy it.
I forgot to enjoy it. Yes,
that's
the worst. Imagine looking in the mirror. You're 80, 90, 100 years old, and you had longevity, but you look in the mirror and you just go, you never felt it. You never enjoyed it. You never took the time to be there. And I also think, coming back to your high school reunion idea, or the magazine shoot, or all of you who are walking in to do, networking in a Zoom room, or when we come back to regular life and we're hanging out with people here again. I love this saying. It's not from me. I can't remember who said it, but I love it. Love it. There's two kinds of people in the world. One walks into the room and goes, "Here I am." And the other person walks in the room and goes, "Oh, there you are." And they're excited to see you. They're excited to acknowledge you, to validate you, to welcome you, to make sure that you feel at home.
Yeah.
And those are the people that we want to be in our lives. Those are that's being the role model, but it's also being, less ego driven. Instead of being so concerned, what do I look like? Who am I like? What's going on here? I've always, the way I got over myself, because everyone still knows and grows, I'm a dork. I love geeking out on personal development. I love books. I love to write. I'm more of even though I teach and I'm, millions and millions of hours of video by now, I generally mostly enjoy being alone, dorking out about my ideas, drawing up, creating ideas and charts and everything everywhere. And so when I go to talk with people, often I want to share that with them. And I have all these ideas. And I know there's lots of people, ideas. I just want to talk ideas. But the best thing I ever did to get over myself and be comfortable with other people is instead ask them about their ideas. Ask about, if you walk into your high school networking, gym and you walk in, instead be like, hey, ask people, hey, how you doing? Hey, what do you think of all this? Yeah. One of my favorite questions, what do you think of all this? Oh, I love the punch bowl, or look at this, or hey, this is happening. I love that we're together. Hey, how you been? Just acknowledging and appreciating other people is such a lost art because we tend to have agendas, because we tend to want to project something. And here's the number one thing. Most people really believe the idea they only have 10 seconds to make a first impression, or they only have 30 seconds to say it right. And I'm like, nothing in life that matters is judged in 30 seconds. In other words, give yourself time to build a relationship. Give yourself time to enjoy that moment. It seems like, well, you have 7 minutes on that major show. I'm like, there's going to be 100 other shows in your future. Some shows you're going to do are an hour-long podcast. Some shows you're going to do are in person. And so I'm just here to say, enjoy it, but also make it about other people. Ask them, validate them, and you'll feel better.
Of course, when we talked about the other day about reading customer letters on QVC, right? It was a whole thing in the green room of putting into practice the idea that I think, exactly to your point, it's like, oh, this isn't about me. It's about something so much bigger, right? And I think that's huge. And I was going to ask you actually, because I think this lifelong journey for so many people of overcoming our inner critic, right? And even going to a whole new, transcending the whole new thing and going, oh, who's my inner champion? Can I wake that person up, right? Yes. Can I wake up my inner champion? And so many of us are like, oh, inner champion, maybe you haven't heard your inner champion ever, or in a long time. And so, Brendan, coaching millions of people like you have, I'm so fascinated to hear for you, like if you also, or I should say, because I think this is universal, I think this happens to everyone, but when you're in a moment where you're doing something and all of a sudden that inner critic, you hear that inner critic, right? How do you turn down the volume on that? What do you do to go to silence your inner critic, or handle your inner critic, or overcome your inner critic, and then swap it to your inner champion? Or what are your tools? Because I feel like no matter what we're doing in life, where we're at in life,
what our situation is inside our own family, inside our jobs, inside our hopes and dreams. It's just this, it's the biggest obstacle, I think, for so many of us.
Yeah. I think one, you have to realize that replacing the inner critic in the moment is super hard. And so you have to think of everything you're doing is like, there's the pre-work, there's the actual in the moment flow work, and then there's the post work. The pre-work is, okay, before the inner critic has to start, you start your morning by tapping into your authentic self, meditating, feeling, thinking about who you are, what's important to you, your morning routine of intention setting, your morning routine of purpose statements, your morning routine of filling your head with good thoughts, your morning routine of acknowledging your strength to show up another day, your day of gratitude for appreciating that you have these opportunities. Meaning you got to start the day, the growth day starts with self-talk. And the self-talk, you have to condition the positive voice inside, your inner champion. You have to amplify that, turn it up, and talk to it every morning and every day if you ever want that to be louder than the critic. What most people do is they bumble through the day, a doubt comes up, they hear it, they go, is that true? They start amplifying that thing because there's no other voices. Your job is to find your authentic voice, your acknowledging, aware, compassionate, loving self voice. Give that so much volume so many times that's just, hey, that station's louder. That station is louder because you're on that station more. So now when the other one starts interfering and coming in, you can go, oh, what is it saying here? And it's almost always, the inner critic is really a doubtful voice. It's almost always a doubtful voice. I doubt my capability. I doubt who I am. I doubt I'm capable. I'm worthy. I doubt myself. And doubt doesn't mean stop or shut down. Doubt means, oh, this is a signal to be more present and intentional. Oh, this isn't to question myself and my capabilities. It's going, oh, hey, I don't know if I can do this. Let me pay attention. Doubt's a great signal to pay attention and to engage the best of who we are. It's like, oh, those butterflies, that's saying, oh, let's align here. Let's get focused here. Let's bring some attention to this. So first, don't think that voice will ever go away. It's going to be there. It's always going to pop up. But don't think it's a negative thing telling you you're terrible. It's saying pay attention. And then also up the station on that authentic, acknowledging, loving self-talk each day, the affirmative side of who you are. Listen to that so often and give yourself that blessing so often, because some of you, it's not going to be your spouse who's going to acknowledge you or validate you. So some of you, it's not going to be your parents or your sister, your brothers, or the people in your industry. They're all going to doubt you or judge you or push you. So you've got to affirm yourself. You've got to tap into that truth, that knowing, that beauty, that soul, that spirit, that authenticity that says, why? I do deserve to have a good day today. I do have good intentions for today. Let me listen to that part of me more often. And that conditioning of positive, affirming self-talk starts becoming a part of real confidence, right? Conditioned self-talk becomes confident capability.
So good. You know, I'm looking at so many of your comments right now, and so many people are saying this is so timely. I needed to hear this right now because, you know, one of the things I love about this is when we talk about even conditioning and starting our day that way with positive self-talk. I hope the Growth Day Morning Show is a big part of that, of just hearing that, you know, inspiration, like all of us coming together and growing. But, you know, one person also, this Sarah just commented that, you know, the inner critic always comes back, right? And you're saying, it always comes back. And here's the thing is, I feel like our inner critic can get so loud. And I feel like so many of us know when we're hearing it, when we're hearing that inner critic, A, we would never say those things to another human being. And B, when we're saying them about ourselves, we kind of still know in big part, we know they're not true, but but somehow we still, it's so easy to believe it. It's easy to know we're made for more. We're created for more. We have more to give, more to offer, more to serve, more inside of us than we're expressing or giving or living right now. And yet it's so easy to still doubt it anyways, right?
What if the inner critic was an inner guide? And the inner critic was just saying to you, hey, right now, you've got your station turned on to me, the inner critic, the low station, the self-doubt station.
Yeah.
And you, instead of going, oh, that critic's so scary, and let me find all the reason to criticize me, it's like, oh, the inner critic is actually calling you to summon the better part of you. It's saying, hey, you're listening to the lowly insecurities right now. Let me amplify those insecurities so you're aware that you're listening to them, dummy. What you need to do right now is switch to the other station. I am guiding you with all this blaring noise to summon a higher part of you. The inner critic is summoning the higher part of you, not shutting you down. It's summoning you. It's not going to go away. There's always going to be that part of you going, hey, dummy, you're smarter, you're better. Hey, let me judge you just enough that you get edgy and you go, no, I'm better than this, and you show up. It's egging you on to show up better, not shut down. As soon as you get that, oh, I'm being egged on like a good friend. Because listen, the inner critic is you.
Yeah.
And that's a good friend to you saying, hey, I'm going to bug you just enough. I'm going to shame you just enough. I'm going to doubt you just enough until you finally go, F no, let's go. I'm going to try to piss you off. That's what the inner critic is going to do. They're there to amplify you to go, no, I am better than this. It is actually summoning strength. And if you can hear that, instead of being diminished, be called. When crisis doesn't diminish you, when conflict doesn't diminish you, when fear doesn't diminish you, but rather you sense it as a calling to rise to something, to a higher standard, to serve. This is why today we celebrate Martin Luther King. Dr. Martin Luther King had the same challenges so many people did. What he did was he said, I have a dream. I'm going to rise up. I'm going to learn to do all of these things that he didn't know how to do, to lead an incredible movement that we still celebrate today. You have to think about it, like, whoa, that's 60 years later. We're still celebrating this person. Why? Because all those calls, all those judgments, all that hate, he said, I'm not going to let the darkness shut me down, because it is only light and love that will lift us up. So I'm going to amplify those. You can hit me with all the hate you want, but I'm going to activate love. That's the change. When it's not a diminishment, but a calling to rise above it, that's a mindset shift that now helps us activate. I hope that helps everybody.
So good, you guys. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So many comments. So many comments.
I appreciate each of you. And thank you for cheering me and Jamie on in this Growth Day morning show. This is new for us too. We both had doubts. We had our first couple of days were technologically challenged on both sides. You know, I still think I look so goofy with these white things hanging in my ear. I still got this camera taped up with this blue tape over here. Jamie's got hers. So we're still figuring it out, but we feel like, okay, so what? We're not doing it perfectly. We are called to serve. Stop worrying if you show up perfectly or you look perfect. Show up to serve. And enough times doing that, you're recognized.
So good what you said. And I always, you know, one of the things I think about a lot is we all face opposition, right? Sometimes it is our inner critic, but we also all have a calling. And I think that so many times, I believe always your calling is stronger than your opposition. But so much of life comes down to which one we listen to. Yes. And you know, you talk about, you know, Dr. Martin Luther King, and I think obviously so much opposition, you know, during his time, and obviously his calling was so much bigger, right? And that's what he listened to. And I think that, I don't know, I just keep going back to those words you shared earlier too, about walking into a room and instead of saying, here I am, saying, here you are, right? I think that's when we make it not about us and it's something so much bigger than us. For me, I think that's, I mean, in my journey, that's, you know, how one of my best strategies for overcoming that inner critic, because for me, that inner critic is there every single day. Every single day. I even doubted, even though I've gone on national television thousands of times with no makeup. This is my first Growth Day morning show in no makeup. And I had a moment where I'm like, but it's like, oh, no. The only way to have authentic human connection is to fully show up as ourselves. The only way to serve is to not worry about stuff like that literally doesn't matter, right? And so it's kind of growth in progress, growth in process, I think, for so many of us, and some of the tips you shared on how you frame in your own mind that inner critic. I've never heard that before. That's so powerful. That's so powerful, as if it's the station summoning you to get so angry that you're like, F that, and you transcend it. Huge.
Yeah, it's your best friend egging you on saying, oh, it's like if your best friend was like, oh yeah, you suck. And you're like, hold it. It's just like if you ever saw people playing sports and you're playing basketball with someone, the crap talking is done to summon a higher level of game. They've actually measured this in communication studies in sports. Less crap talk tends to lead to less incredible performance. And it's not because we're not diminishing each other. We're egging each other on to play at a higher level. Now, I know there's lots of judgment about even that in sports, but I think my point is recognizing that all your inner fears aren't meant to shut you down. They're meant to help you pay attention. You were talking about resistance and all the resistance. And I hope everybody, by the way, spend some time today watching some, speeches from Dr. Martin Luther King. If you haven't read the autobiography, the official biographies, or any of his collected works of speeches, I can't even imagine this day for the last 23 years this year now. I read his speeches. I have a big book that my dad gave me that I just read his speeches. And it's so powerful to see what he was willing, and not just him, the entire Southern Christian Leadership Conference and so many other great leaders of that time, trying to really speak up for something. And he said, if our main question is, who were you serving? And he said that if we aren't willing to speak up for what is right, then we're not living life. And so many of his great quotes that everyone will share on the internet today, I'm sure, just remind us to stand for something. Even if you are scared, stand for something. You're not doing a magazine shoot today. You're standing for something today. You're standing for a message. Yeah. We aren't worried about our insecurities of, I'm like, is my kettlebell in the shot today? I hope not, and I don't even care. It's like we stand for something at Growth Day. We stand for the belief that you can grow, that you can change, that you can have better days, that you can shift your attitude. We stand for something. So we're not trying to make everything pretty. You're going to stand for something today. And everyone needs to realize, what do you stand for today? What is it that you stand for? And the less you ask yourself that, the more the insecurity voice just fills it in. Oh, you aren't intentional enough to stand for something? Let me just fill it in with some noise here.
Yeah.
That's what happens. I would say your negative self-talk is because you haven't filled in the void.
Yeah, so good.
You got to. I work on this. Look at this. I got this. I pulled this off the desk. This is a calendar of affirmations from Hay House. This is Louise Hay. I hope you all read "You Can Heal Your Life" from Louise Hay. Louise Hay and Wayne Dyer, who were like who really made and rounded out Hay House with Reed Tracy as CEO. So a whole book of affirmations. I've been doing personal development for 20 years professionally. I still read my affirmations and I read them out loud because I want that voice to be activated. I would love for you all in your morning routine to read out your Bible verses or read out your favorite motivational quotes or read out that part of that spiritual text that you love. Read something out, like activate the voice. You've been given voice. If you have the blessing of speaking, you've been given voice. Activate that in a positive, affirming way. And it becomes a language pattern in your head that's louder than the insecure, quiet things. You know what I mean?
I definitely want to talk about some of the myths and the lies that we tell ourselves, but let's go into before, because you really primed the three things. Why don't we talk about those three things quickly so it's on people's radar?
Yeah. And if they know, like, well, wait, is this really for them? Because to your point, like, self-confidence is so important. I see self-confidence almost as like this house we're building with all the rooms and the achievements and the new art on the wall and this beautiful, masterful house, which is important. But our self-worth is the foundation beneath all of it. And if our foundation has cracks in it, like, our house will only ever be as strong and as fulfilled as that foundation. So self-worth, it challenges. And by the way, let me preface this by saying most people with self-worth issues can often be crushing it on the outside and everything looks like it's going so well and they're winning in their business and in their jobs and this and that. But here's how self-worth issues show up in three ways. And it's universal, no matter how much of the world's definition of success you have. So if you have low
to medium self-worth, it can often look like you're stuck and you don't know why. And you might be like, oh, my business is at 6 figures, but I don't know why I can't get it to 7. Or I have this big idea to run a company or launch my own thing, but I don't know why I'm not going for it. Or I want a life partner, but I'm just not getting on the dating app or putting myself out there. And a lot of people feel stuck. They don't know why. And they think, I just need to get more skills. And that's important and might be true. Or I need to get more experience and that might be true. A lot of times, though, people are stuck because deep down inside, they don't actually believe they're worthy of the thing. They don't believe they're worthy of a loving relationship, or they don't believe they're worthy of actually going from having an idea inside of them to launching the business. And it becomes a deep-rooted self-worth issue, why we're stuck. Because to what you shared, we don't rise to what we believe is possible. We fall to what we believe we're worthy of. And then low to medium, when you have low to medium self-worth, what that often looks like is medium level self-worth, is that you'll go for the thing, you'll put yourself out there, but you hit a ceiling, like your self-worth is your ceiling, or you sabotage it along the way, right? You write the whole manuscript and then you don't know why you're not sending it out to publishers and instead scrolling Instagram for 8 hours a day. Or you meet a great partner and you just somehow are just not attracted to them and you put them in the friend zone. And you don't know why you're sabotaging different things. And a lot of people do this. They can be crushing it in their business, doing all these things, but they're sabotaging personal relationships or fitness goals. And that's what medium self-worth looks like. It looks like we'll hit a ceiling or we'll sabotage the thing. And then medium to high self-worth, which a lot of achievers fall into this. That looks like you'll go for the thing, you'll actually achieve it and arrive at it, but you won't feel fulfilled and you feel like something's missing and like it's never, ever enough, and that you're never enough. And so the big breakthrough here, I think, is that for a lot of us, for me, for decades, I just thought solving that with more achievement or things that built more confidence would finally make me feel enough, not realizing confidence is fragile. It's based on the external. And what I really needed is self-worth. And to your point, building self-worth is really about unlearning a lot of the lies that lead to self-doubt and igniting those truths that wake up worthiness. So that's why I wrote Worthy.
Yeah.
I wrote Worthy if you have some self-doubt to destroy and a destiny to fulfill.
Yes. Is there a lie that you want to highlight? I mean, obviously everyone's listening. They're going to go and be inspired to get the book. Is there a lie that you want to unravel for people and point out so they could be sensitive to it? And I'm sure there are a number of lies that we tell ourselves that lead to self-doubt and what the truth would be to embrace, to be able to wake up to own that worthiness.
Yeah. I mean, just cracking open Worthy for a minute and just to some of these lies, if I'm me, I won't be loved. I'm the real me. I'm an imposter. That is a big one. Right now, as we're talking, 73% of men feel inadequate and not enough. 80% of women feel like they're not enough. 75% of female executives deal with imposter syndrome. It is a big, big issue. Another lie, labels are permanent. A lot of us have let labels, oh my gosh, your story is so powerful around this, about how to not let things other people say about us stick to us. And there's a whole exercise and framework in the book about how to unlearn and remove labels. Almost like a lot of us think labels are permanent, and we let them stick to us like permanent things, but they're really like Post-it notes. You can remove them like a light adhesive, and you can, apply new labels to your life. If I stand out, I'll get kicked out. A lot of us are afraid of our greatness, and we dim our light and show up inauthentically to belong. There's another whole chapter in here about people pleasing, right? Which 40% of men describe themselves as people pleasers, over 50% of women do.
Wow.
And so many people, but like we feel we need to please others in order to be accepted or love or belong. But oftentimes it comes as a result of us betraying ourselves. And every time we show up inauthentically in this world, we are telling ourselves that who we are isn't enough. And so I guess if I were to pick one line, this will be really hard. You and I actually recently dove deep into rejection and reframing rejection. There's a whole masterclass in here in Worthy, the book about how to change your relationship with rejection to change your life. But in our time, I would say, I hope and pray everyone listening to us, and this is something I love so much about you, Jim, is when you step into the power of owning who you authentically are and like all of who you are, that is when you live in alignment with your assignment on this earth. And there's a whole chapter called You're Not Crazy, You're Just First. And what I love about this chapter is for anybody listening to us who has ever felt like who they are is not enough, or like perhaps if they were the real them, then maybe people would be like, oh, they're not as cool or funny or smart or competent as I thought they were. Or if anyone has ever felt odd or quirky or strange or different, this whole chapter called You're Not Crazy, You're Just First, is one of my favorites for that, because I share how growing up, I was adopted and raised by 5 different families and loved them all. I'm so blessed beyond measure. And what I will say is I was the only one out of all 5 of my families that would have these kind of out there ideas like, what if we could end world hunger? What if I could launch a business one day? What if I could become a CEO one day? Right. And I had these just big ideas that were not normal for the families and environments I was raised around. And they'd always call me terms of endearment. They thought like, you're crazy. Like who do you think you are to have ideas like this? And I remember after many years of always kind of feeling like I needed to kind of dim my own light or change who I was to fit in. I was actually the first person in any of my families to go to therapy in my late 20s. And I remember asking my therapist, I said, my whole life, like people who love me, they're like, you have these wild ideas, all these things, like you're crazy. You're, these terms of endearment. I asked the therapist, I said, am I crazy? And she said, you're not crazy, but I'm really glad you're here. And she explained to me that when you're the first in your peer group or family or friends to kind of think different or be willing to show up as who you fully authentically are, not everyone's going to get it right away, because there's only one of you that has ever been created, ever. And and this is for everyone listening to us right now, if you are one of the brave ones willing to show up authentically as who you truly are in this world, you're first. You're the first ever you. There's never been another you before, right? There's no one else with your unique fingerprints or heartbeat or your unique tongue print or your unique iris of your eyes or the experiences you've had in life or the emotions you feel the way you feel them or the way you see art and beauty and the world. And there's never been another you. And so whether you approach your business authentically or anything else, don't be surprised if not everyone gets it right away, because they've never seen another you before. And when I launched my company, It Cosmetics, and grew it to $1 billion company, right, over many, many years, the first many years were met with all this rejection and people not thinking it's going to work. And also, I was entering a crowded space. A lot of people tell themselves the lie. This is one of the lies in the book Worthy, that my idea's already been done and I have nothing special to offer. Jim, I do not care how I entered a makeup industry where there's tens of thousands of makeup companies.
One of the most competitive industries out there.
Yeah, it's already been done. But guess what? I don't care what industry anyone listening is in, or if you or what product you're going to launch or what idea you're going to put out there that you think, well, maybe someone else has already done it better. If you are actually willing to do it authentically to you, by definition, it has never been done before, ever. And that's the secret sauce. And so I remember the moment when my therapist had shared all this with me, and I had this moment that was like a light bulb went off in my brain, so bright that it burst, where I was like, I'm not crazy. I'm just first. I'm just first. And I remember that every time I got told no, growing my business, every time I thought, I really believe in this vision that this product can really help people one day. And I'd be told, oh, that's never going to work. And I just would remember thinking, I'm not crazy, I'm just first. Or when I walk in a room and for whatever reason, maybe don't feel like I fit in, I'm like, I'll tell myself, it's okay. I'm just the first me. Eventually they'll love me. And this is a lie we tell ourselves, that if I am who I am, it's somehow not enough. And if I'm the real me, I won't be loved. And every time we show up inauthentically, which, by the way, Jim, it's impossible to have another connection, a true connection with another human being, whether it's a friend, a partner, our customers, unless you actually show up fully authentically. And so that is your power. That's your genius zone. And anytime you show up inauthentically as someone you think people want you to be, you're chipping away at your self-worth and telling yourself that who you are is not worthy. And so unlearning this lie, when you tell yourself, I'm not crazy, I'm just first, it is powerful. It feels like joy. It tastes like freedom.
Tell these folks a little bit about starting, a $1 billion company in your house on the floor. And maybe what's the mindset to go when you have all the doubt?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the first and most important thing is doubt's so normal, right? Doubt, imposter syndrome, thinking, oh, do I have what it takes? Right. So anyone out there feeling that right now, it's universal. And Brendan, I don't know if you've had this experience, but the more people that I've looked up to for decades, some of the most incredible people in the world I've had the blessing of meeting now, they all say the same thing. They even still now, when they launch a new thing or a new network or a new anything, right? They all actually deal with the same thing of, do I have what it takes? Am I enough? How will this be received? Is this going to matter? Do I belong? I mean, all those things that people don't want to admit they feel, we all feel them. Even people that it just blows me away and makes me feel less alone when I hear them share those things, which is why I love that we're, all coming together in community for Growth Day morning show, Monday through Friday.
Talk about some of the struggles that you've had with anxiety, with self-doubt. We've all been there. The biggest enemy is between our ears, imposter syndrome. I still struggle with that. I don't think it ever goes away. You talk about body doubt and God doubt. I have never heard God doubt though. What is that?
Yeah, I think my whole journey really is figuring all of that out. And I think, for me and a lot of people, when I built It Cosmetics, right, we started in our living room, and my whole journey was just filled with no's. Sometimes you'll see a founder launch an idea or a product or whatever, and it will get hot right away. And that wasn't my experience. My journey was, and by the way, to answer your question, figuring out how to overcome not just self-doubt and body doubt, but God doubt was critical in my journey of starting with literally no money in my living room, building $1 billion company, because it was really a journey of so much rejection and hearing so many no's along the way, and learning how to, well, first of all, I prayed like crazy, but I also doubted God exists a lot of my life. And I really learned in my journey how to turn down the noise and the volume on self-doubt and other people's opinions. For me, when I pray and I just get this gut feeling, like I think I've never heard God talk, but for me, in my own personal faith, I believe, God talks to me through my intuition. I think when I get a really strong gut feeling, I've learned to trust it. And for me, it's really been a big journey of keeping my faith bigger than my fear. I go there, like in my new book, Believe It, I go there. When I built a company of over 1,000 employees, you have to be so professional and respectful. And I intentionally hired teams of every different faith, of no faith, I believe that not just our teams, but our boardrooms should look like our customers do. And our customers at Cosmetics are every person, every age and shape and skin tone and gender identity and faith and background. And so I really intentionally hired a team that way. And so my personal faith wasn't something I talked openly about very much in the whole journey. And so, but I think for me, it's like the espresso inside the latte. It's like, if you don't have it, it's not the same in my journey. So I talk about that really openly a lot, Nicole. And I think that I really think it's important we share like the real stories behind the stories if we're ever going to really grow together. And, you know, I was raised going to church every Sunday, but I didn't connect with faith. I would just sit through church and scan the pews looking for cute boys, like counting down the minutes until the sermon was over. And so most of my life while I was in a family that had faith, I would pray, but the truth is I would kind of like doubt that God was real. And one of the stories I talk about in the book is the journey of God doubt. And there was a moment in my life where I was having a really tough time. It was actually in news. I was in news at the time. And it was the first time in my life I was dealing with anxiety and all these things. And anyways, a therapist said to me when I was saying to her, you know, I don't even know if God's real. I'm doubting he exists. I found out I was adopted. So I was like, I don't know where I come from. And anyways, long story short, she said to me, well, what makes you think God can't handle your doubt? And I'm like, what do you mean? And she goes, tell him you doubt him and ask him to prove you wrong. I was like, okay. So this started like a decade-long journey of every time I'd be praying for a friend's health or something. And at the end I would say, by the way, God, like literally in the middle of my prayer, like silently, but I'd be like, I'm doubting you exist. So if you could please prove me wrong, beyond a shadow of a doubt, I'd be so grateful. Thank you. Amen. And I share in the book just some of the crazy, crazy, crazy stories of what happened. And some of them even with investors, potential investors, with retailers who had said no to our product for so many years, like calling me out of the blue saying, I don't know why, but like I was praying last night and I got this feeling that you're supposed to be in our store. And it'd be like the weirdest conversation. So anyways, I share a lot of that stuff in the book that I've never shared before because I think these are real conversations. A lot of times, you know, you look on social media, you see founders, entrepreneurs, you can read business tips all day long. But at the end of the day, as you mentioned in the beginning of this, I really believe for every one of us, every founder listening right now, every person who's going to be part of this or watch the replay, us living up to our potential, us stepping into our calling, us becoming the person we're born to be. It's not business tips you can find anywhere. It's about figuring out the game in our own head of overcoming that self-doubt and all the other forms of doubt in our life in order to truly become the person we're born to be.
It's about telling that mean girl or that mean guy inside your head to take several seats. You call it an inner critic. Do you think she ever really goes away?
No, I think that inner critic can get so loud. And I think that so often, and especially as women, right, you look at a lot of the research out there that shows that we'll often make decisions by consensus, right? Like you'll see, you know, even it's from the time we're little kids, you know, you'll ask an opinion and we do this still as adults, ask an opinion. And typically women will go, oh, you know, and they'll take a survey, friends or family, and then we have our own inner critic. And what I think happens to a lot of us is we start to confuse that inner critic or that inner self-doubt or other people's opinions with our own truth, with our own knowing that we all have. I believe we all have a knowing. And I believe our gut is always more stronger than anyone else's advice. But I think what happens so often is that inner critic gets so loud and we don't learn how to literally when I hear my own inner critic, and I don't think it ever goes away. I imagine myself turning down the volume and replacing thoughts with something that I know is true or that I just want to decide is true anyway. and that's more, more empowering. And I think, I started at cosmetics in our living room, close to no money. And I poured every penny I had into the business. And I thought, okay, if we can create just a great product that really works, it's just going to sell. And then as so many founders have also shared this experience, I was like, oh, it's not that easy. You can have an amazing product. And, I really did a lot of work on, and I talk about this and believe it a lot about not just
figuring out the why for my brand, but peeling back the layers on it, going really, really deep to the why beneath the why that helps, because that's what really gives you the strength to keep going when you get knocked down. And I had done all those things, but what I wasn't ready for was, or I guess I should say wasn't ready that was going to happen, was just how much rejection would happen along the way. And when people tell us no, or a lot of other words, right? Like when people literally look us in the eye and say, like, you're not the right fit for us or our customers, you're not right for our stores. It's not just a no right now. It's just, it's a real no. Like you're not the right. And you just hear people or change who you are to fit in, or change your packaging, or change this or change that. I think often when we get rejection, it can actually be helpful. Like there's parts of it, there's other people's advice, experts' advice that could be really helpful in forms of rejection. But if we don't learn how to get still and hear, turn down our own inner critic, turn down the part of us that wants to replay the rejection over and over, if we don't learn how to get still and turn down the volume on that and really check in with our gut and go, okay, this retailer just told me change my packaging to this, or that this isn't right, or whatever. Does that feel right to me? Does that advice feel right to me? Right? I'm telling you, like, had I not learned to do that, I would have never built $1 billion company, because on the journey of building It Cosmetics, the first 3 years were hundreds and hundreds of no's. Like all of the retailers I love and shop at my whole life. And like, I would save my tip money as a waitress at Denny's to like buy a MAC lipstick or Lancome eyeliner from these beautiful stores. I love these stores. And they were all telling me no, that I needed to change who I was, or change our packaging, or our packaging was too accessible. It needed to be way high, way more luxurious, or I was using real people as models. And, and at the time when I launched It Cosmetics, it wasn't really being done. And I had a lot of retailers say, people will not buy makeup from images that look like them. Like they need, and they would explain this to me in detail. They would say things to me like, you need to have an unattainable image of beauty that someone could never hope to achieve for them to buy your product. And I'm like, okay, or maybe people are sick and tired of seeing people that don't look like them, because for me, I have rosacea, bright red, bumpy everywhere on my cheeks and my nose and my forehead. And I couldn't find makeup that worked for me, right? My whole company started with a problem I didn't know how to solve. And I realized, I've never seen any models, but, selling makeup that look like me, that have skin challenges. And then I would try all the products and they wouldn't work. And so I just kind of like had this gut feeling, well, if I, am this age or size or skin tone, or have the skin challenge or whatever it is, and I don't see someone who is showing me the product works for them, how do I know it works for me? It was just intuitive to me, but it wasn't being done. And they all told me, like, if you want to get in our stores, here's what you need to do. And those are the moments, Nicole, that define our lives, when our gut tells us one thing, but like in my case, I had no money. I was, if we were going to, like for 3 years, I didn't know how we were going to stay in business. Right. And I made the decision to listen to my gut and to not change what it was telling me about what to do with our brand. And that is, I believe, like critical to ever building anything that lasts or anything that matters. When you change who you are authentically, and even when it comes to your product or your positioning or, your vision, when you start changing that because you want to get into a store or get onto someone's site who's huge, or, whatever it is, it's a short-term pop in revenue, and it feels good for a minute, but long-term, I think it's one of the biggest reasons why tens of thousands of founders don't make it, because they start getting distracted by what everyone else tells them is right for their brand, or is hot, or is going to make them money. And they dilute their own authentic secret sauce. And at the end of the day, you can't fake authenticity, and customers are smart and they know it. And over time, it never works
when you go against what you authentically know for your brand.
Ladies and gentlemen, rock this house and welcome to the stage, Jamie Kern Lima! Baby Kern Lima!
Every single one of us has had someone tell us we're not enough. Every single one of us has had someone say words to us that hurt.